Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video covering the CrinEar Daybreak. I've already done an unboxing of these, but you've got a nice tri-bird set, dynamic driver, 2 planars, 2 BAs at a price of, I believe, $170. I've got already the things out on the box. Again, you can check the unboxing video if you really want to, but it comes with a interchangeable 2-pin cable, comes with a nice carrying case that does have a lot of space inside and a magnetic clasp. Comes with a set of silicone tips as well as a set of memory foam tips, and again, an interchangeable cable. So you can see it does have the 3.5 termination and the 4.4 in the box. What I will say is this IEM has been comfortable for me, but the nozzle, you guys can see, has a little bit of length to it and is a bit wide, but you can tip roll and find plenty of comfort. I've had no issues personally, and it is a 3D printed resin chassis here on the backside, so it does have great comfort grooves on the IEM itself. The front side, again, it's got that black face plate with the Daybreak on one side, CrinEar on the other, in a nice chrome finish. Overall, I think a pretty pleasing appearing IEM in terms of its overall aesthetics. For a music listening perspective, it is using the IEF 2025 curve, and Crin talks about that extensively in his videos and has even a description of it and what he's trying to accomplish. But the way he describes it, I think, is perfectly acceptable. It's got some heft in the low mids. It has a bass shelf that's low, clean, deep, and rumbly. I do find that there is adequate rumble, but it's definitely not something that is a bass head IEM, so you're not going to get this huge sub bass punch and rumble if you're looking for it. But on this set, I do find that the mids are exceptionally clean. It's a very clear mid-range. I do find vocals as well, female and male vocals, to come through with a nice sense of separation from the mix, and they come through actually very clean. So a nice set, particularly if you're looking for this sort of tuning for a single player experience or a music listening experience. And the way Crin described the sound experience on these, or what he was trying to achieve, it actually is reminiscent to how I feel about these when I get into game. He mentioned that the mids and the treble are kind of made in a way that are supposed to sound like speakers in a well-treated room, and that kind of goes into what I'll talk about in Valorant as well as Apex and COD, but there is this kind of sense when you get in game that things are pushed off of you a little bit, and the benefits and the detractions from that I'll get into right now for Apex, Val, and Call of Duty. Let's get into it. Getting into Valorant, I will say the Daybreak sounds fantastic. It's a little bit of a warm atmosphere, but not overly so. Vandal has this nice bass effect to it. It sounds great, but not overly rumbly or bloaty. The decay, however, is a little bit less fast as I would like, so as you are shooting, you may notice that it does cover up little things of footsteps, etc., so there's a bit of a layering issue. I didn't find separation to be all that horrible on these, but I do think that there's just some artifacting with depth perception in general in Valorant. So when I'm turning a corner and I hear a footstep and I think it's a little bit closer than it is, and it ends up being behind another wall in front of me. I ran into that issue multiple times. There were times where I thought something was actually further away than it was when I turned a corner, and it ended up being closer and I'd lost the gunfight. So there's a bit of an issue with depth perception, particularly in Valorant. I tried tip rolling. I was not able to correct or solve that. And there were even times where I would turn out and I thought a audio cue was in front of me on the same plane, and it actually ended up being in heaven. So there is some verticality artifacting as well. With that, I would not necessarily place these high on a wallhack certified tier list, but if you were to use these for casual listening purposes, again, comms sound great, the game sounds great in general. It is something that still maintains a level of competitiveness that does work. It's just I don't find ever that I have this spotlighting effect or this removal of this fog of war. I hear something in a general location, but it never sounds like pinpoint precise to give me this tickle of where exactly somebody is in front of me. I just lose out on too much data, and for that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend these for competitive gaming. Will they work to an extent? Yes, absolutely they would. I would probably put them around a low B- on my list. just because of that artifacting issue. I think it's very important for tack shooters being able to turn a corner and have this great read, shaving off all this excess and knowing exactly that pinpoint location when you're getting ready to turn a corner with your crosshair placement of exactly where somebody is. Again, these sound absolutely fantastic and enjoyable. I've been using them in Wildgate because I enjoy the tuning and the sound profile a lot. But overall, just not something that I would recommend as a result of that artifacting in general for Valorant. But again, something that will work generally, just not at a greater level as things that will shave off that excess and not have that kind of fog of war effect as you are walking around the map. Now, transitioning from the tack shooter experience in Valorant, I did find to have less of an issue, surprisingly, with verticality in Apex Legends. I do find, though, there to be a sense of verticality issue in Call of Duty. Like when people are flying in and parachuting in, I don't find much of an issue. But when you're really dealing with people in a building is when the issue does pop up. There are elements as well that do detract from that ability to read things both in Apex and Call of Duty. But let's start with Apex. I do find that in fights, the thing that shines the most through the mix is going to be gunfire, particularly gunfire from your perspective. So if you're shooting a 301 Hemlock, Prowler, etc., you do have a elevation in the gunfire in general over the footsteps, the audio cues that are happening around you. It's people sliding, climbing, etc. It becomes very hard to hear those things. So separation layering does take a hit there, particularly, of course, when you have multiple people in a building and you're trying to focus on 3 different sets of footsteps. That's when layering becomes an issue, particularly when there is gunfire. When you do have footsteps in general in a fight, again, they're harder to read. The 301, Hemlock, Prowler, etc., some of the things that have a lot of that elevation in the 2 to 4K range, it becomes very hard to pick up on people in gunfights as well because there's a bit of resonance at the end of the gunfire for some of the weapons in Apex. Unfortunately, there is that elevation on a lot of guns in Apex, so it becomes quite hard. Layering in fights, again, mostly going to take a hit and separation due to gunfire, but when there are ultimates going off, of course, you'll be shooting as well during a lot of those times, and it does add and detract from the separation and layering as well. The imaging in general, when people are in a building, even next to me, let's say on World's Edge, like if I land in streamer building and people are on train or the buildings around me, it's just hard to layer out the 3 different sets of footsteps from a team in another building. And the footsteps in general are already kind of reduced. It's just a little bit harder to hear those things. Like in game, the ambiance really does, like the space does seem to be off of you a little bit. And the things that are ringing through the mix to a greater extent is gunfire. But even the gunfire around you is a little bit of a harder read in terms of depth perception. Like, do I generally know what building it's coming from? If I land near streamer building in World's Edge, yes. But I don't have that like clean cut, precise read like what I was discussing when we were talking about Valorant. I don't find like effects like grenades and ultimates to have much of an issue. But again, when you add that gunfire, which will ultimately happen, is when it becomes even more of an additional issue with separation and layering. I do find that with a lot of the footsteps in Apex as well, they are a little bit on the softer side already. So it's just, again, harder to pick up on slides, climbs, etc. And I do find that shield batteries and shield cells have an elevation as well. So if you have somebody, like if you're popping a shield battery and somebody is shooting, it becomes quite hard to micromanage your health and see, like, do I need to cancel this battery? Do I need to cancel this shield cell because somebody is inching up on you or climbing up on you, etc.? It's hard to hear those things during gunfights. So overall, a great tuning in terms of, like, from a casual perspective, does the game sound good? Yes. I don't find anything to be shouty in that gunfire range. The ultimates and things like that, the space in general sounds good. It's just not something that I would recommend for Apex from a competitive perspective as a result of all of those reasons. When we transition to Call of Duty, I find there to be similar issues, and it's even more of like this mashed potato effect. When you get in game, the space feels great. Again, again, it's a little bit pushed off on you. I do find there to be more rumble and more draw on airstrikes, mortar strikes than the ultimates in Apex. I don't find that rumble to necessarily be an issue. It's really an issue of just the footsteps, the kicks indoors, people jumping through windows. Those things are already so like hard to read from an imaging perspective and a depth perception. For instance, if I'm on a roof and I hear somebody under me running along the side of the building and I want to take an angle and look down and try to see them, it's just already hard to get like this full sense of where they are in general, that it becomes a greater issue when you start adding in the ultimates, not ultimates, but airstrikes, mortar strikes, grenades going off, etc. In gunfights, when you have teammates shooting, it becomes even harder. I don't find there to be this like great elevation in gunfire from my perspective. At like in Apex, most guns are a little bit more manageable in Call of Duty. But again, it's just like too much of this mashed potato effect in picking up footsteps, having this nice, clean-cut, clear perception of where those footsteps precisely are. And as I'm pushing into a building, if there are multiple enemies, again, it becomes very, very hard from a layering perspective to separate out those footsteps in your head and get a full sense of what target you need to focus on first in a building. Does the game sound great? Yeah, like from the instance of me landing in Resurgence and getting that nice music in the airplane and some of the audio cues, like everything sounds great to me. Nothing sounds shouty. The bass is nice and warm, has a nice rumble, but it's not too much. The mids come through nice, clear, and really with this great sense of clarity. It's just, again, from a competitive perspective, it's not something that I would recommend for Apex or Valorant or Call of Duty. If you're looking, though, for something to take into, I've been using these in Wildgate and listening to them. They sound fantastic. Single player recommendation, absolutely. Music, casual listening experience, great. Just not something, again, that's going to get onto the wallhack certified tier list. So guys, those are my thoughts for competitive gaming. Not going to be something right now that joins that competitive wallhack certified tier list, but something that does work if you want to transition it over. You're just playing casually. I do think they sound good and should offer a decent experience. Just not one, again, I would use for a ranked competitive climb in competitive games that I spoke about in this video. I would supplement this video if you are wanting these for music. If you like this tuning, I do think they sound great for my tracks that I'm listening to right now, which really consists of a lot of rap. If you are looking for a music review, I would try to find somebody that listens to the same genre as you, so somebody that can speak to K-pop or country, etc. It's, you know, just not things that I'm listening to right now. But definitely supplement and check out some of the reviews from some great reviewers from a music listening perspective. The video's already gone on long enough. I'm going to cut it there. Again, you've got my thoughts for competitive gaming. I'll see you in the next review. Peace.